If anyone's ever had to have their car repaired, you don't drop your car off at the dealership and then just sit and wait for them to contact you. They'll be like, "Oh, Mr. Chopin, your car's ready." That's just not it. That's not how it goes, right? You drop your car off, and then like the next day, you're like, "All right, I wonder what's going on." You call and like, "Hey, were you able to diagnose that problem yet?" Right? And then the guy's like, "Oh, hold on a second. Yeah, I was just about to call you." And then we think it's this, this, and this. And we're like, okay, let's say you give them the green light. They're going to go ahead and fix it. And then the next day passes. And you're like, man, it really sucks not having a car. I wonder if they're done with those repairs. Hey, have you made those repairs yet? No, Mr. Justin, we're still working on it, right? It's the same thing. That's just how people are, right? I mean, we all want to know. So clients are the same way. Our customers are the same way. Like, they want to know. Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. I'm your host, Justin Chopin, business owner, lawyer, dad, world's best husband, traveler, and adventure seeker. On this podcast, we mix business with pleasure. We'll dive into growth strategies, entrepreneurial adventures, the business of law, and prove that business isn't boring. So let's get ready because we are going above the legal limit. Welcome to another episode of Above the Legal Limit. I've got a great guest here today. We're doing a special series. Every now and then, I like to bring somebody in-house onto the show. So everybody, put your hands together. Where's the clap box? All right. Hey.
What an intro.
What an intro.
Who knows what it is?
Welcome to the show. No one even knows. Patrick Weilbaecher. Patrick is one of our lawyers. He's been here a couple of years now, more or less. And Patrick focuses a lot of time and energy on those remaining hurricane cases. And you probably still have more hurricane cases than anybody here, I think.
Pros and cons, but that would not shock me.
Pretty sure you do. As well as our PI docket, and he works with a fan favorite, Phil Lorio, and they have a team together. So welcome, Patrick.
Thank you, Justin. Excited, I guess, to be here.
I know. I get that a lot. So let's talk about it. Let's break it down. What the hell are you doing here? You had a nice defense job, just like me. What on God's green earth would make you want to be a plaintiff's lawyer?
Well, it's former guest Frankie Canoni's fault, really.
It's true.
I was pretty happy at my old defense job, and Frankie and I are good friends. So every once in a while, we'd go hang out, and all he would do is talk about how much fun he was having with Justin and Phil and the rest of the crew over here. And he just beat me down until finally he convinced you, I believe, to finally take me to lunch. And I believe that was a profitable lunch for both of us because kind of got the wheels turning. Phil kept putting on the hard press, and then a month or so after that lunch, I decided, you know what, let's make the change. Let's take the leap. And about a year and a half later, here we are. There you go,
a year and a half. Okay, it feels like you've been here a really long time. Interpret that how you want. You know? Well, so, and unfortunately for you, I believe you started right at the deadline for Hurricane Ida. Was that
2 weeks before the deadline for Ida cases? I came on. I think in those first 2 weeks, I probably filed 60 to 70 lawsuits. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that definitely was wild.
Threw me in the deep end, but I think we have survived up to this point, and I think we're rocking and rolling now.
Yeah, those were interesting times. I'll never forget. So when we print out the checks, right? We keep the stubs, 3-part check, right? And I like to keep the stubs every month so I can go back and look just to make sure. And you have your trust checks, that's money going to the client, and then you have your operating checks, that's just money that the business is spending. And the trust checks, well, that was like this tall. And then you had the operating checks were like this tall. They were all, I couldn't even put a rubber band around them. We spent so much money that month. Absolutely terrifying time for us. But you're right, we made it through. I think, not to toot my own horn, but the way we do our hurricane work, I think, we kind of put it together the right way. No one's running cases for us. Right. So when we get a hurricane client coming to us, it's because, they either know of the law firm or they've seen an ad out there. They found us some way legally. And then they hire us, and then we hire an expert. And then we file the lawsuit. So that's like the most expensive way to handle a hurricane case. But for anybody who's doing hurricane volume, I do think it's not the norm.
If you do it any other way, though, you get behind the 8 ball, and you end up losing money at the end of the day. I think if you just kind of take anything that comes in, file suit, and then see what you have after that. So I think, again, I didn't have to pay I didn't write those checks.
It was a really expensive month. My wife, made a few comments. She was like, when I was saying about doing this or that, she's like, don't you remember that September where you like thought you were having a heart attack and couldn't sleep? And I was like, oh no, that was fine. That was last September. Everything's great now. But I think that, when we talk about there's a right way to practice law, I think that the hurricane litigation is a great example of that. That we just don't do things the way that our competitors do things.
No.
And I like to think that we treat it the same way as any other case. So if you had a major industrial accident, right, we would do the same thing, right? So client would hire us, and then we get some experts, and we'd start putting the case together. But you are on the forefront of the hurricane litigation. How many do you have left?
Only about 25 or 30, I think. And a lot of them are lagging more because of the other side than ours, which I think the other side would probably say too. But a lot of the stragglers were cases that came in at the very end of the deadline that fell through the cracks on defense, took a while to get another attorney on the side.
Or their LIGA.
I didn't know if you wanted to go into LIGA, but LIGA's been a lot.
I don't care.
I think I'd say probably 80% of the hurricane cases I still have are LIGA. That's probably even a low guess. It's just been a nightmare to deal with. They're not subject to the laws that any other insurance company is subject to. They can kind of do what they want and kind of skate by, and then eventually when they feel like getting back to us, they'll throw us a lowball offer that we can't accept on behalf of our client, and then it gums up the works for another year.
Right, and then it just sits for even longer, right? And I can't get a trial date, and I can't get attorney's fees against you, and I can't get damages. And this is exactly what the insurance company wants, and they want to expand this for all insurance cases. But look, even I have a house, had received damage during the hurricane. The insurance company comes out, they adjust the claim, and they gave me like $10,000 maybe. And I told them, I was like, guys, and honestly, it was challenging for me because I was so busy handling everybody else's insurance work that I didn't really have time to work on my own case. But eventually I told the insurance company, I was like, guys, you realize that this is just what I do all day long, right? So you're giving me a $10,000. You know that I can't get this property fixed for $10,000. So I had the benefit of being able to get my experts out there, send them, but you shouldn't have to go through all this, right? And so eventually I think they gave me like $125,000. So that's less than 10% of the value of the damage.
And they bank on you not being a lawyer. They bank on you saying,
right,
oh, $10,000 is enough to get me started, and then never come back to them.
Right. So they were just like, oh, it's this guy named Justin. I don't know who he is or what he does, and just see how little we can give him, and maybe he'll either go away, or maybe he'll wait too long and let the deadline pass, and we can always give him more later. And that's how you find yourself in the very much not unique position of having to hire a lawyer after a hurricane. So
yeah, and that's, I think, why the pileup was everyone got that initial payment, thought that the insurance company would do right by them, and whether the insurance company went under or whether the insurance company was just screwing them over, they waited until they saw a commercial or saw something in the newspaper that said, hey, if you don't file by August 29th of 2023, you're completely SOL. And so we started getting calls right when I started saying, hey, I didn't get paid anything. I got paid $3 on, 3 cents on the dollar. Can you help me? And at that point, it's like, yes, we need to file a lawsuit and get going.
We have to sue first, find out later.
Yeah.
Now, what were you were defending hurricane cases, right?
I was.
Yeah. So that's generally, everybody knows that's kind of our model. That's what I like to do. I like to find someone who's done it on the defense, and then sort of groom them to be plaintiffs' lawyers. I use that verb groom because it's inflammatory. So because then you kind of understand both sides of it, right? And if you haven't ever defended an insurance company, you only see one portion of it when you're suing an insurance company. And I learned this when I had a young associate once who said something like, well, I don't understand why the insurance company won't pay. They have the money. And I remember saying, like, don't ever say that to me again. that's not how this works. And that's what made me realize. It's like, this lawyer just didn't have the benefit that I had of representing insurance companies for 10 years. And of course they have the money. That's the whole point. That the goal is to make money. And the only way to make money is to collect money and then not spend the money. And then that's how you have the money. So ever since then, my goal is like, no, we only hire, reformed defense attorneys. So, but what I'd love to hear is from your perspective, I would imagine it was a big shock coming from sort of the defense world and where you were to this madhouse here. What do you think was probably the most surprising shift?
It's really how you structure the case from the beginning, because you're on the defense side. Usually the only cases that get to a defense attorney are the very good or very bad cases, depending on whichever perspective you're at. Here, ideally we get a client a year or so before we even have to file a lawsuit. You're in contact with that client. You're making sure that the claim is moving through how it should be. And then if you do it right, you don't have to sue at all because you've set it up to an insurance adjuster saying, hey, save your money, pay us now, and we can be done. Whereas on the defense side, you get this huge, especially in a hurricane case, 1,500, 2,000 page claim file, and you start picking out all the things they've done wrong. You're underwater to begin with. You're on the defensive, to use that term, from the get-go, and you're always trying to play catch-up. Whereas here, if we do it right, which we do it right, you always are on top of things. You know what you're doing. You know where you want to go, and you get to lead the case a lot more than you can on the defense.
Yeah, and I think it's a little harder, actually. It's a lot harder to play offense than it is to play defense sometimes, because on defense you're just breaking apart what someone else has already built, and sometimes on the plaintiff side you've got to build it, and now you're dealing with a realm of unknown, right? Yeah. So it's like, well, I don't know, versus like defense, you're just coming and knocking things down. But I find what I always tell defense lawyers is, where they don't understand is that their entire docket is comprised of maybe 15% of my docket. So the other 80 or maybe 75% of my docket is all pre-lit. And those are cases we haven't filed suit on yet. So they're, for one reason or another. So defense lawyers, they only see, and you said it, like the good and the bad. And there's two reasons for that. They only see that bottom 25%. And those are the cases that either we couldn't settle, or we're not worth settling because they're too good of cases and we know what they're worth, and no, I'm not looking to settle my case for pennies on the dollar. And so you're right, you're seeing either the really good ones, or you're seeing the ones that I know have some troubles, but we're gonna work for the clients and try to do as best we can. And so I think that's the biggest shift between being a plaintiff's lawyer and defense lawyer is as a plaintiff's lawyer, you've got to focus so much energy on that other 75%. Which is not anything you might encounter as a defense lawyer.
No, and a big difference with that 75% is who you're talking to. You're on the defense, you're talking to maybe 5 or 6 adjusters, depending on who your clients are. You're talking to them, and you're talking to other attorneys. You're in this little bubble of litigation and people who are kind of jaded by the process.
Right.
Whereas that 75% of cases, and that's, I think, our kind of meat and potatoes, is, again, we do a very good job of having those clients, walking them through it, and you're talking to real people, right?
Right.
And so it's a different perspective, it's a different conversation, but it really kind of reminds us why we do this, instead of, I'm just trying to placate some insurance company or some partner over at a defense firm.
Right, or pushing paper around, right? So I used to do those client meetings, right? You're with, underwriters of Lloyd's or some insurance company, and they're like, all right, here are the 10 cases we have together. What's up with this one? 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 Or maybe you don't even get that. Maybe, you just send them reports, which no one's reading and no one cares about until the end of the case, and then they're all upset about something.
Yep.
And then they finally go back and read the reports. But yeah, on the plaintiff's side, right? Plaintiffs call, right? They want to know what's going on. It's like anybody else. So you put your car in the shop, right? if anyone's ever had to have their car repaired, you don't drop your car off at the dealership and then just sit and wait for them to contact you. They'll be like, "Oh, Mr. Chopin, your car's ready." That's just not it. That's not how it goes, right? You drop your car off, and then like the next day, you're like, "All right, wonder what's going on." You call and like, "Hey, were you able to diagnose that problem yet?" Right? And then the guy's like, "Oh, hold on a second. Yeah, I was just about to call you." And then we think it's this, and this. And we're like, okay, let's say you give them the green light. They're going to go ahead and fix it. And then the next day passes. And you're like, man, it really sucks not having a car. I wonder if they're done with those repairs. Hey, have you made those repairs yet? No, Mr. Justin, we're still working on it, right? It's the same thing. That's just how people are, right? I mean, we all want to know. So clients are the same way. Our customers are the same way. Like they want to know. They want to know what's going on. They want to know, hey, have you had a chance to review my file? Like, what do you think? Do you think it's a good case? Hey, did you do the things that we talked about? Or, hey, how's it going? And so one of the things that's a challenge and a benefit to us is the way we communicate with our clients.
Yes.
And it's something that I think, we kind of built from the ground up from day one. So it's client communication has always been important to me. Really because I'm a former defense lawyer. And so I'm not used to a world where I would ignore my client. It's just foreign to me. As a defense lawyer, lawyers who ignore their clients and the defense lawyers are unemployed lawyers.
Yes.
Like they eventually get fired. And so we don't want that. We don't want to be fired. So I don't know. I view plaintiffs as the same way. I try to be proactive. We try to think about it. We try to leverage technology. And I know that's a challenge for a lot of plaintiffs lawyers is staying in touch with their clients. But I think it's one of the things when someone says, what's different about the Chopin law firm? Like, what is unique about your firm? Because there are a million other law firms out there, and they all look the same. You guys are all wearing the same suits, right?
Everyone strongly disagree. This suit's much nicer than.
Pretty sure you and I are wearing the exact same suit.
Well, I hope yours is much nicer.
You all look the same. You all talk the same. So what is different? Well, I think what's different about us is our approach. This understanding that the client is a customer. And the customer, right? The customer's always right. We want the customers to be happy. We want them to refer,
And even further than that, I mean, I don't think our customers are always right, but that's why they hire us, right? And we need to tell them where to go or, advise them of where we think they should go.
Well, fair enough. Yeah. Counsel them as we would say when we're being, fancy. But I mean, like, at least in a way that I just hate the way that clients get treated on the plaintiff side when I hear – someone will hire us from like a big box firm, and I'll say, well, who's your lawyer over there? And they'll say, well, I don't really know. And I'm like, wait, what? You don't even know? And they're like, well, I've never talked to him or I've never talked to her. I'm like, you've never talked to your lawyer? No. So what the hell are you paying for? What is that? And I understand the way those big box firms are set up. They don't want to do that, right? They have too many cases. They want to isolate the lawyers, but I just can't get behind that kind of a business model. Sure, right. Customer may not always be right, but they need to be heard.
And they come first, right? I mean, our entire job is to counsel them and represent them to the best of our ability. And, we lay that foundation right from the first call that they make. We make sure that the lawyer is in contact with them right when they sign up. We make sure that they talk to a lawyer, and our staff is incredible. I would be completely screwed without them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they want to talk to a lawyer, and
you're right.
I make sure everyone here makes sure that we are hands-on with every one of our cases and every one of our clients.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think the staff is great here, and I always have to be reminded of this because when we first started, right, we didn't have staff. I think, I started the firm in 2015, so we're in our 10th year. I hired my first paralegal here, and I get my years confused, but I'm pretty sure I hired her in the early summer of 2017. So
8 years ago, yeah.
So there was a 2-year stretch. So if you talk to Mike, Mike Laterno was one of the early, attorneys brought on here. He didn't have anybody for the first 6 months, and we just did it ourselves. And if there were copies to be made, I walked my ass over to the copier. If things had to get scanned, and we're paperless, so we were always paperless from day one. And so every time people send us documents, I have to go to the scanner and I scan them in and then I save them. And one night I'm on the couch and I was talking to my wife and I was just like, I feel like I just spend my whole day at the scanner. And she's like, you need to hire somebody. And I was like, I don't think we can afford it. And she said, I don't think you can afford not to. And right then and there, she's like, why don't you go? I had this paralegal that had worked for me before. She's like, why don't you reach out to her and see what she's doing? And so right then, I didn't even have her number. I Facebooked her. I DM'd her, as the kids would say now, and said, like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Where are you working? Better question, why aren't you working with me? And that was, within 3 days, she was our first employee. We went and had drinks. Much like you, like let's go meet for a drink. Let's talk about it. What do you do? What do you like? What do you hate? And she agreed to come on board, and that really changed things. And so the staff, when we had the director come on, the director position, I think he was really surprised to see just like how big of a job they have for us. There's so many things that they do for us. And without him,
I'd be lost. I never experienced opening a law firm, but through every point, even on the defense side, having a good support system throughout the firm, whether it's above or below, it's incredibly important for a successful career.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, look, they're front of line on the phones, right? I mean, they're helping us with filings. They're building out our systems. It's a lot. It's a big job. It's a really big, in some ways, when I walk around and I'll see all the lawyers are gone and the staff, they're all here, they're still plugging away. And I think that that's probably the best example, where, or after Hurricane Ida.
That's exactly where I was going.
Hurricane Ida, all my lawyers were scattered. Right. I mean, I got Mike's up. I don't know where the hell Mike is. Mike's like in his car driving from Maine. Phil's going nuts. Phil's like trying to get his kids enrolled in a school in Tennessee. I'm like, what are you doing? Why? Everyone's got like Katrina PTSD. Everyone just assumes we're never coming back. Adam stayed home, lost power and internet, and no one heard from him for weeks. And so really, it was me and the staff. And I knew exactly where all the staff was. I had talked to every single one of them. We were in constant communication, and we were keeping the place going. Like they were plugged in where they were plugged in, because I always had that Katrina benefit of being like, well, no, that's never going to happen to me. My firm's never going to be in that position. And so I built the firm so that a major disaster comes through and we're operational within one day. Yeah. Right. And so another good example. We intakes were moving along. Filings are moving along. And slowly, as my lawyers got their shit together and sort of came back, then, but the downtime was minimal. And really a lot of that was because the staff were willing and able and to do the heavy lifting for a couple of weeks. So, so we had a major shift here. I used to say, we're not going to invest a lot of money on staff. You don't need them. You can do it yourself. And now, we sit there and say, like, okay, what other roles could we fill? Like, where do we need help? Without having to have a case manager, because we don't do case managers. But what other support might we be able to build out that'll help us? And I think without them, we'd be pretty listless. Or actually, I can tell you, you'll just be standing at the copier all day.
That sounds terrible.
It is not fun.
That's bad for the back. So.
It is not good for the back. It's all the way down the hall. So, they give me questions to ask.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I love it. All right, can you share a particularly rewarding experience you've had while working at the firm? All right, let's hear it. Come on. Make it a good one.
Okay, well, you will go along with the conversation. Veronica, my paralegal, started with us having never worked in a law firm before.
Not technically true, but go for it.
Oh, well,
she had a short stint, though.
Yeah, well, I didn't get the benefit of the resume. I was just told.
I got it all up here.
Yeah, I was about 2 months in, and I get a basically brand new paralegal.
Yeah.
And, I was a little worried about that because I was just starting. I was in need of support for sure. And Phil was there, you were there. But, as far as staff goes, And just to see how she started, how she has been supported by the other staff, and how she has supported me for the past year and a half now, how she has grown. She's become an incredible paralegal who, again, I would be completely useless without. That's at least the one that comes to mind first.
Yeah, Veronica's great. Huge success story. I love finding, people that really work out. Everyone always says I'm 50-50 on hiring.
That'd be terrifying.
They might be right. They might be right. I think I might be a little bit better than 50-50, but she's one. She was a great hire. She was a great find. She's a hard worker. She's smart, and so yeah, I always feel I'm very lucky to have her with us. I don't like to put new people with new people. I learned that in the defense world. There are like a few tricks. Like we never have someone in a hidden office in the corner. Never put new staff with new lawyers. But in this instance, we didn't care about you, and so we're like, here, to take the newest person and don't screw it up.
I got that vibe. So.
Yeah. But when we talk about this, what we're really talking about is building sort of a team. And so we talk about that a lot here, and so. When we work with some different marketers, they want to know like what's your culture, and I think our culture, and you can elaborate on this some, is a sort of an atmosphere of teamwork.
Absolutely.
But when we had a meeting, and I said, well, what are our core values? And one of the paralegals was like, well, I have no idea. I was like, uh-oh, that's not good. So what do you think? What do you think? What do you think is unique about our culture here?
I mean, teamwork is a good way to put it. I think, again, having never worked at a different plaintiff's firm, I only have the perspective of a defense firm. But the way we work is we take the person into consideration. On the defense side, from what I understand about the big box firms, everyone's a case number. Everyone is
a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah. And we have those. Obviously, we have spreadsheets. We need to stay on top of everything. But at the end of the day, it's that person's case that it is. And whether it's Veronica talking to them, whether it's you talking to them, whether it's me talking to the client, it's always the client's case. And we always keep that as the front of the mind as we move through it. And, it could be a terrible case. It could be a good case. But one, we always make sure we're in contact with the client and letting them know, look, if you have a bad case, you have a bad case. But
look, we don't know.
Right.
Just to be clear, we don't know when a case walks in the door if it's good or bad. Right. I've said this for years. If a case walks in the door and it's a stunner, you're like, I'm so excited to be working on this case. This is going to be, a very profitable case, an interesting case, a good case. It most likely will turn to shit. It just doesn't work that way. Very rare do you know going into it. And then likewise, a case walks in the door and you're like, I'm not sure about this. Because not everything is the same. I don't know if this will be a good case. And then a lot of times those cases end up becoming extremely good cases.
Yeah, we've
great clients. A lot of times all you can go by is like the client, what's the client? Are they earnest in the way that they, do they come across well? Do they believe in what they're telling you? And sometimes that has to drive the ship a little bit. But there's just no way of knowing. But you're right. The clients, it all starts, the culture and the teamwork atmosphere, it just starts there. It starts with the client, and then we build it out from there. So, but, everybody thinks they have the best firm. I get it. They're wrong, but they all think that they have the best firm. Everybody thinks that they have, a unique value proposition. I don't know that they do. I know that we do. I know that the way that we approach the practice of law, the way that we, structure the firm, the way that we put clients first, the way that we encourage our team to do whatever it is that they want to do. Like how many people here are going back to school, it's actually a little challenging, right? The other day I needed somebody, everybody's in college. I was like, well, shit, but we do that because we believe in them and we believe, giving them the opportunity and we need them, we rely on them, we trust them, and so I want them to do better. I want them to do great. So, I'm getting this. So they're telling me I've pontificated enough, and thank you very much, Patrick Weilbaecher, rising star of the Chopin Law Firm. I appreciate you coming on the show and giving us some of your insights.
Always a pleasure. I'll see you in 2 seconds outside the door.
That sounds good. Thank you for joining me today on Above the Legal Limit. If you enjoyed the show and you want to hear more about business and law, hit that subscribe button. If you didn't like the show, keep it to yourself. Remember, there's no limit to what we can achieve. We will see you next week. Until then, even though we're above the legal limit, let's drive safely. Cheers, everyone.